and music news, sports and entertainment. We are High Power 102.7 FM, the pride of the people.
Good morning and welcome to IPOWER 102.7 FM, transmitting live from INIOLUWA, Ondo State. The program is In the Papers, your go-to guide for today's headlines and inside stories. For the next 1 hour, we shall be taking you through exploring major stories that are making rounds in the newspapers, giving you facts and insights on all you need to stay informed. I am Florence IBHAREMAN, and with me on the program is
INIOLUWA ADEKOYA.
We shall be taking you stories from various newspapers, ranging from the Punch newspaper, we have the Nation's newspaper, we have This Day newspaper, we have the Daily Post, also we have.
I will be taking you stories from the Oak newspaper, the Punch newspaper, and the Nation newspaper.
Okay, we'll go on a short break. When we come back, we'll kick straight into the headlines for today's stories.
Glad to have you back. You're still on to In the Papers, coming to you from iPower 102.7 FM. Now straight heading to the headline, beginning from the Oak newspaper. Adopt realistic budget, CSO urge Ondo State government.
And straight to the Hope newspaper, where I have Supreme Court verdict. Governor Ayedatiwa holds Thanksgiving service, dedicates victory to God.
Still on the Oak newspaper, federal government revokes 1,263 mineral licenses over unpaid fees.
And straight to the Nation's newspaper, where I have First Lady at 65. Tinubu pays tribute to confidant Oluremi.
Still on the Oak newspaper, talking on GAT 2025. Federal government targets empowerment for 10 women.
And still on the Nation newspaper, where I have State Police power dissolution, orders back on front burner.
Now I take a flight into the Punch newspaper. Kebbi local government imposes curfew after deadly gold miners clash.
And straight to Daily Post, where I have 2027 concern mounts in Nigeria over early election campaigns.
On the Punch newspaper, NAHCON sets October 8 deadline for 2026 Hajj fare payment.
And straight to the Guardian newspaper, where I have Women Coalition to storm NASS over reserved seats bill.
Still on the Punch newspaper, Taraba governor begins statewide tour ahead of infrastructural drive.
And still on the Nation's newspaper, where I have OB questions while National Library still needs birthday donations.
On the Punch newspaper, China, Nigeria trade hits $15.48 billion in 7 months, says Consul General.
And still from this day newspaper, where I have Shatima, Senate, North governors celebrate First Lady Oluremi Tinubu as 65.
On the Punch newspaper, Shehu Sani urges federal government to change local government chairman title to mayor.
And still on this day newspaper, where I have this from El Rufai, Tinubu planning life presidency, not genuine Democrats.
Moving to the Nation newspaper, ADC faction fought INEC over David Mark's recognition to court.
And straight to the Punch newspaper, we have IBAS reject Assembly's move to probe 6 months spending.
Still on the Nation newspaper, federal government begins relocation of herders to Kawu Grazing Reserve.
And still on the Punch newspaper, talking 2027, APC opposition list expectations for next INEC chair.
Finally, on my end, in the Nation newspaper, Reps hold national public hearing on Constitution review today.
And from this day newspaper, where I have FCT Minister Wike authorizes new demolition at River Park Estate.
And with that, we will take a short break. When we return, we will bring you the rest of the news making the headlines in the papers.
And you're welcome back. It's still in the papers from iPower 102.7 FM. I have this from the Hope newspaper speaking on Supreme Court verdict. It says Governor Ayedatiwa holds Thanksgiving service dedicates victory to God. Now the details. The Ondo State Governor, Honorable Lucky Ayedatiwa, has attributed its Supreme Court victory to divine intervention with a promise not to disappoint God and the people of the state. Speaking during a special Thanksgiving service held at the Government House chapter on Sunday, Governor Ayedatiwa said it was the grace of God that made his triumph possible. He expressed profound gratitude to God for seeing him through the political and legal battles, even as he thanked the people of Ondo State for their steadfast support, stressing that the Supreme Court victory belongs to the people and not to him alone. Ayedatiwa, who dedicated the victory to God and the people of Ondo State, commended the judiciary for strengthening Nigerians' democracy. The governor added that it would also acknowledge God in his ways, noting that gratitude attracts more blessings. He pledged to govern with fear of God and ensure that the dividends of democracy reach every citizen. For details, see the Hope newspaper with the headline Supreme Court verdict. Governor Ayedatiwa holds Thanksgiving service dedicates victory to God.
And on the Hope newspaper with this headline, adopt realistic budget, CSO urges Ondo government. And now the details. The chairman of the Coalition of All Civil Societies in Ondo State, Mr. Alon Martins, has called on the state government to adopt a truly participatory and realistic budgeting process, release funds promptly for implementation, and address insecurity to attract investment. Speaking in an interview with newsmen shortly after a consultative meeting between civil society organization and government officials, Martin said the forum was a welcome tradition but had drifted from its original purpose. According to him, budget consultation in the state began under former Governor Olusegun Mimiko, when civil society actors were trained by the World Bank on the medium-term sector strategy and jointly prepared budgets with government. Martins, who is also the executive director of Upline Center for Development, insisted that the state must prioritize an economic and realistic budget over political budgets if it hopes to deliver on development promises. For more details on that story, see the Hope newspaper with the headline, Adopt Realistic Budget, CSO urges Ondo government.
And straight to the Nation newspaper, where I have First Lady at 65. Tinubu pays tribute to confidence Oluremi. Now the details. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu yesterday paid glowing tribute to his wife, Senator Oluremi, on her 65th birthday, describing her as his confidant, counselor, and unwavering anchor through decades of political and personal trials. President Tinubu said the First Lady is not just a spouse, but a partner whose quiet sacrifices have shaped their family and impacted the nations. He said in a statement, Oluremi, as you celebrate your 65th birthday today, I am honored not only as the love of your life, but also a woman whose quiet strength and enduring grace have been my steadfast anchor. He said, through every season, from the longest years of struggles and political exile to leadership responsibilities, you have stood firmly by my side with dignity, patience, and devotion that were Oluremi.
On the Oath newspaper, federal government revokes 1,263 mineral licenses over unpaid fees. And now the details. The federal government, through the Ministry of Solid Minerals Development, has announced a fresh revocation of not less than 1,263 mineral licenses. These licenses, which will now be deleted from the electronic mining cadastral system portal of the Nigerian Mining Cadastral Office, include 584 exploration licenses, 65 mining leases, 144 quarry licenses, and 400 development. Dele Alake gave the revocation announcement in a statement issued by his special assistant on media, Segun Tomori, recently in Abuja. The minister explained that the directive was issued due to the company's failures to comply with the requirement of paying their annual service fee. The latest revocation brings the total mineral titles revoked under the current administration to 3,794, including 619 mineral titles revoked for defaulting in paying annual service fees and 912 for dormancy last year. For more details on that story, see the Hope newspaper with the headline, Federal Government Revokes 1,263 mineral licenses over unpaid fees.
And still from this day newspaper, where I have Tinubu's from RFI, it says, Tinubu planning life presidency, not genuine Democrat. Now the details. A former Kaduna State Governor, Nasir El-Rufai, at the weekend accused President Bola Tinubu of planning to stay in office for life, maintaining that there are pointers to that effect from recent actions by the current All Progressive Congress APC-led administration. He also further took a dig at the president, describing him as a fake Democrat, especially over the recent alleged attacks on members of the African Democratic Congress ADC in the parts of the country. Speaking when former Vice President Atiku Abubakar paid him a solidarity visit in Abuja over the recent altercation that ensued during the meeting of the opposition party in Kaduna, the former minister of the Federal Capital Territory said that Tinubu intends to take after some seats tightened Tom sit tight African leaders who have failed to vacate their seat after spending decades in power. In the beginning, El-Rufai, a founding member of the APC, threw his weight behind Tinubu in the run-up to 2023 presidential elections, mobilizing support for him, especially in the northern part of Nigeria. However, after the victory, El-Rufai's hopes of serving in Tinubu's cabinet were dashed as his ministerial nomination was blocked, a development perceived by the former Kaduna governor as his supporters as betrayal. Since then, El-Rufai's public commentary against the president have begun to harden as he has ramped up his criticisms of Tinubu's style of governance and his short-term result of his economic reforms. For details, see this day newspaper with the headline, Tinubu planning life presidency, not genuine Democrat, says El-Rufai.
Still on the old newspaper, now talking on GAT 2025. Federal government targets empowerment of 10 women. And now the details. The federal government has said it has activated the economic empowerment of no fewer than 10 million women to achieve its $1 trillion economy ambition. The Minister of Women Affairs and Social Development, Iman Suleiman Ibrahim, disclosed this in a high-level sideline event of the 2025 United Nations General Assembly in New York, USA. The event themed Scaling Women's Economic Empowerment, Financing Inclusive Growth for Peace, Development and Human Rights, Lesson from Nigeria for Women project. It was gathered that Vice President Kashim Shettima departed Abuja recently for New York to represent President Bola Tinubu at the 80th session of the UNGA. Speaking at the event, the minister said the economic empowerment is being achieved through targeted projects, initiatives, programs, and interventions focused on women. She said that one of the key vehicles being utilized for the empowerment is the Nigerian for Women project. According to her and FWP, under the leadership of President Tinubu, is currently the nation's most significant women economic empowerment platform. For more details on that story, see the old newspaper with the headline, Federal Government Targets Empowerment of 10 Million Women.
You're still listening to iPower 102.7 FM, and the program is In the Papers. We'll go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the stories for today's headlines. If you're just joining, it's iPower 102.7 FM, and you're listening to In the Papers. Straight to the nation's newspaper, where I have Presidency tells Sani to cancel El-Rufai over life presidency claims. Now the details. The presidency has fired back at former Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai over his alleged claim that the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is plotting a life presidency. El-Rufai made the statements on Friday evening during a solidarity visit from former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. The visit followed an incident at the inauguration of the African Democratic Congress ADC in Kaduna, where El-Rufai was reportedly attacked by APC-aligned supporters. Speaking during the visit, El-Rufai said, this government is trying to centralize everything instead of devolving powers to the lowest level. But the sum total of this is that we are facing an evil of the large proportion in the history of this country, that if we that if we don't come together to end this, Tinubu's administration in 2027, Tinubu will try to be our Paul Biya. He would be the president for life. All the signs are there. This is how Paul Biya started. In response, the president said El-Rufai appears to need some help, then describing El-Rufai's statement as baseless, absurd, and a clear sign of political depression. Presidential aide Bayo Ononuga, in a tweet on Monday, accused El-Rufai of spreading falsehood and engaging in what is called hallucination and political fabrication, aimed at discrediting the president ahead of 2027 general elections. For details, see the Punch newspaper with the headline, Presidency tells Sani to cancel El-Rufai over life presidency claim.
And now I take a flight into the Punch newspaper with this headline, Kebbi local government imposes curfew after deadly gold miners clash. And now the details. The Yauri Local Government Council in Kebbi State has imposed a dusk to dawn curfew following a violent clash between rival gold miners in Garin Kata community, which left several people found dead and property destroyed. The crisis, which began recently, reportedly started after a miner was killed during a dispute over gold. Relatives of the deceased were said to have launched a reprisal the next day, triggering a wave of attacks that quickly spiraled out of control. Eyewitnesses said shops were vandalized and motorcycles set ablaze as residents fled for safety. Security operatives have so far recovered the body of one victim, who has since been buried according to Islamic rites. Announcing the curfew recently, Chairman of the Yauri local government area, Abubakar Shuaibu, said the restriction, effective between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., was aimed at curbing further violence and restoring calm. For more details of that story, check the Punch newspaper with the headline, Kebbi local government imposes curfew after deadly gold miners clash.
Still taking stories from the Punch newspaper, where I have IBAS reject Assembly's move to probe 6 months spending. Now the details. The immediate past Rivers State Administrator, Vice Admiral IBAS retired, and the Rivers State House of Assembly may be gearing up for a shutdown following the latter's decision to probe the state's expenditure over the last few months under the former. IBAS ceased to be the administrator of the oil-rich state on September 17, following the end of the 6-month emergency rule after President Bola Tinubu directed the suspended state governor, Siminalayi Fubara, his deputy, and the State House of Assembly members to return to office from the previous Thursday. The Rivers State House of Assembly, presided over by the Speaker, Martins Amiewule, during its first plenary after the end of the emergency rule, said it would investigate the state's expenditure during the 6 months of emergency rule. Findings by the Punch showed that the Rivers State received at least 254.37 billion naira from the Federal Account Allocation Committee between March and August 2025 under the tenure of the sole administrator. The figure is based on the analysis of FAAC data from the National Bureau of Statistics and other sources. For details, see the Punch newspaper with the headline, IBAS reject Assembly's move to probe 6 months spending.
So, the National Hajj Commission of Nigeria has announced October 8, 2025 as the deadline for state Muslim pilgrims, welfare boards, agencies, commissions, and licensed Hajj tour operators to remit Hajj fares ahead of the 2026 pilgrimage. Recall that the Commission had earlier announced a provisional fare of 8.5 million naira for the 2026 Hajj exercise as part of the early preparations for the pilgrimage, pending financial negotiations on all service contracts. In a statement signed by the NACON Deputy Director, Information and Public Relations, Fatima Usara, recently, the Commission said the deadline is in line with the operational calendar released by the Saudi Ministry of Hajj and Umrah, which stipulates strict timelines for contracting and payment for the service. Usara explained that Saudi authorities set September 6, 23, 2025 for early contracting and payment of the Mashhar camps, while September 23 to 24, 2025 was fixed for essential services such as transportation and accommodation. For more details on that story, the Punch newspaper has it with the headline NACON set October 8 deadline for 2026 Hajj fare payment.
Still talking celebration, Shatima Senate, Northern Governors Ododo celebrate First Lady Oluremi Tinubu at 65. The Vice President Kasim Shatima, his wife Nana Shatima, and Chief of Staff to the President Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila are felicitated with wife of the President Senator Oluremi Tinubu as she clocked 65 on September 21, 2025. In a separate statement issued on Sunday, the trio celebrated Mrs. Tinubu's service to humanity and the Nigerian nation. Shetima, in the birthday tribute entitled Celebrating 65 Years of Grace, Service and Compassion, stated, "Our dear First Lady and inestimable mother of our great nation, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, happy 65th birthday, Ma." In his words, he said, "Words cannot define what this day means to us all. From my family, staff, and indeed the entire nation, 65 might be a figure, but to us, it is a reflection of countless years of brilliant motherhood, exemplary service to nationhood, and a reflection of the brilliant compassion and unwavering support that a First Lady can provide to her husband and the entire nation. Indeed, when the history of this great nation, and in particular President Tinubu's administration, is written, your name would be inscribed in gold, for you have earned it, and your good passion, good heart, service, sense of decorum and strength that you have brought to bear on our nation's development and progress. For details, see this day newspaper with the headline, Shetima Senate, Northern Governors Ododo celebrates First Lady Oluremi Tinubu at 65.
Still on the Punch newspaper, Taraba government begins statewide tour ahead of infrastructural drive. And now the details. Taraba State Governor Dr. Abu Kefas recently announced the commencement of the statewide listening tour to engage directly with communities and identify their development priorities ahead of massive infrastructural projects set to begin in October. Speaking at the interactive session with journalists at the EXO chambers in Jalingo, the governor explained that the initiative is rooted in his belief that genuine development must reflect the need and aspirations of the people rather than top-down decisions. The governor noted that he inherited a state without a master plan, stressing that genuine development cannot take place without a roadmap or plan of action. On security, Kifas disclosed that his administration has been investing heavily to keep Taraba safe for residents and attract investors. It described security as a non-negotiable foundation for sustainable development. The governor also highlighted reforms in the health sector, including revival of the primary health care center across the state. For more detail on that story, the Punch newspaper has it with the headline, Taraba Governor begins statewide tour ahead of infrastructural drive.
And still taking story from this day, where I have FCT Minister Wike authorizes new demolition at River Park Estate. Now the details. Former FCT Minister Ansem Wike has directed the Department of Urban Control to demolish new construction being carried out by Polo's homes at the River Park Estate, Abuja. Wike stated this to reporters at the weekend during an inspection of the estate. He said the other party in arranging disagreement in the estate, Ghanaian company Joan Capital, possessed an expired development lease agreement that prompted the revocation of certificate of occupancy in line with clause 9.2 of the DLA. He also insisted that Polo's Homes was a third party that had no business with FCT administration, adding that for the Canadian firm to enter into an agreement with the third party was also a contravention of one of the clauses of the lease agreement. Wike said, and I quote, "And when I said I think the lease agreement had expired, no more development, and that was one of them. Polo Homes did was overnight because he stated he started to do construction in order to tie the hands of the administration, which of course will not will not succumb to such. And so we sent out the Department of Urban Control to come here and demolish every construction going on, and that will continue to do." For details, see this day newspaper with the headline, FCT Minister Wike authorizes new demolition at River Park Estate.
To render your views on any of the stories read out to you, the number to call is 0816-552-4699. The number again, 0816-552-4699. Back to the Punch newspaper with this headline, China-Nigeria trade hits $15.48 billion in 7 months, says Consul General. And now the details. The Consul General of the People's Republic of China in Lagos, Ms. Yan Yuxing, has said bilateral trade between China and Nigeria reached $15.48 billion between January and July. Yuxing disclosed this recently at the reception to mark 3 historical occasions: the 76th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China, Nigerian 64th independence anniversary, and Mid-Autumn Festival. She said the figure represented a 34.7% increase compared with the same period of 2024. He said the increase reflected the growing strength of China-Nigeria relations, describing Nigeria as China's second largest trading partner in Africa. She explained that the elevation of relations between both countries to a comprehensive strategic partnership at the 2024 Forum on the China-Africa Cooperation Summit had created broader prospects for corporations. The envoy explained that collaboration in infrastructure, energy resources, trade, culture, and education continue to deepen, bringing tangible benefits to citizens of both nations. For more details on the story, the Punch newspaper has it with the headline, China, Nigeria trade its $15.48 billion in 7 months, says Consul General.
You're still listening to iPower 102.7 FM, and the program is in the papers. We'll go on a short break. When we come back, we'll continue the rest of the stories. Glad to have you back. You're still listening to iPower 102.7 FM, and the program is in the papers. Taking you straight to the Punch newspaper, where we have APC opposition list expectations for the next INEC chair. Now the details. As the 2027 general election approaches, the All Progressive Congress, People's Democratic Party, and African Democratic Congress have outlined key expectations for the incoming chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, emphasizing credibility, neutrality, and commitment to democracy principles. In an exclusive interview with The Punch, the APC urged the incoming INEC chairman to guarantee a fair and equal opportunity for all political parties, while the PDP emphasized the need for the Commission's head to remain neutral and autonomous. On its part, the ADC warned that failure to conduct credible elections under the new leadership could pose a threat to the country's democracy stability. In the current INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, is set to complete his tenure by November. Appointed in 2015 and reappointed in 2020, Yakubu holds the distinction of being the longest serving chairman in the history of Nigeria's Electoral Commission. According to Section 154 of the amended 1999 Constitution, the appointment of the chairman and members of the Independent National Electoral Commission shall be made by the President and shall be subject to confirmation by the Senate. Paragraph 14 of Part 1 of the third schedule also states that the individual appointed must possess unquestionable integrity and must be at least 50 years old. For details, see the Punch newspaper with the headline, APC opposition lists expectations for the next INEC chairman.
Still on the Punch newspaper, Shehu Sani urges federal government to change local government chairman title to mayor. And now the details. A former lawmaker representing Kaduna Central, Senator Shehu Sani, has urged the federal government and relevant authorities to consider replacing the designation of local government chairman with the title of mayor, arguing that the current nomenclature does not properly reflect the executive authority of the office. In a post on his official social media handle, Sani noted that the title chairman appears more suited to a community setting than an executive office, adding that it undermines the importance of local government as the third tier of governance in the country. According to him, the adoption of the term mayor, as practiced in many democratic states across the world, would not only confer greater dignity on the offices, but also align Nigerian local governance structure with international standards. Sani remarks comes at a time where debate around local government autonomy, funding, and functionality are gaining momentum across the country. For more details on that story, check the Punch newspaper with the headline, Shehu Sani urges federal government to change local government chairman title to mayor.
And straight to Daily Post, where I have concerns mount in Nigeria over early election campaigns. Now the details. Almost 2 years to the next presidential election in Nigeria, there is heightened political activities across the country. This is as individuals and political parties are seen already campaigning in violation of the Electoral Act, which explicitly stated that campaign of any kind are not allowed until 150 days before the election. Many Nigerians are worried that political leaders have abandoned governance and channeled all their energies to the campaigns ahead of 2027 election. To make matters worse, the electoral body, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, charged with the constitutional responsibility to regulate the activities of the political parties in this regard, are not doing anything. The same thing applies to the police, whose constitutional mandate includes to arrest and prosecute those who break the law of the land. The police are also looking away from their impunity. The INEC chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, had last week raised the concern that political parties have already kicked off subtle campaigns despite clear provisions that restrict such activities to 150 days before the elections. For details, see Daily Post newspaper with the headline, Politics 2027 Concerns Mount in Nigeria over early election campaigns.
Moving on to the Nation newspaper, ADC faction faults INEC over David Mark's recognition to court. And now the details. The crisis within the opposition African Democratic Congress has deepened as Honorable Nafiu Bala Gombe led faction has threatened legal action against the Independent National Electoral Commission over what it has described as the Commission's premature and biased recognition of David Mark's led group. The faction accused INEC of disregarding a pending court case challenging the legitimacy of David Mark's leadership and going ahead to accord its official recognition. In a communique issued at the emergency joint meeting of the National Working Committee and National Executive Committee in Abuja, National Chairman Nafiu Bala Gombe condemned INEC action, alleging it undermines the party's leadership structures and threatens Nigerian Democratic Foundation. The communique noted that INEC's decision to upload the David Mark-led faction on its official portal raises significant questions about the Commission's neutrality and credibility.
A coalition of more than 750 Nigerian women will come to 2025. In a statement signed by the chairman of the Women's Political Participation Technical Working Group, Ebere Ifendu, more than 750 women drawn from all 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory are participating in a march and the submission of the memorandum to the National Assembly. According to a statement, the women's group are mobilizing under the Women's Political Participation Technical Working Group, with activities beginning at the Miriam Babangida National Center for Women Development at 9 a.m. From there, the women would march to the National Assembly complex by 10 a.m. to formally present their memorandum to the Senate. At midday, a high-level engagement with stakeholders and the media is taking place at the Transcorp Hilton Hotel, where Nigerian women leaders will continue to press their demand for inclusive governance and constitutional reform. Ifendo described the walk as a collective demonstration of unity by women across the country, determined to make their voice heard at the heart of Nigerians' democracy. The reserved seats bill is not just about numbers, it's about securing women's rightful place in governance and ensuring that their voices are heard where decisions that affect their life are made, she said. For details, see the Guardian newspaper with the headline Women Coalition to Storm NASS over Reserved Seat Bill.
Still on the Nation newspaper, federal government begins relocation of herders to Kawu Grazing Reserve. And now the detail. The federal government has commenced the relocation of herders in the Federal Capital Territory to the 9,000-hectare Kawu Grazing Reserve in Bwari Area Council as part of efforts to end open grazing in Abuja. The Minister of Livestock Development, Idi Mukhtar Maiha, has recently led officials of the ministry, presidential advisors, and journalists to the reserve, where he inaugurated a solar power borehole, marking the start of major infrastructure rollout in the facility. Maiha said the reserve already accommodates over 10,000 herders and their families and owed an estimated 30,000 heads of cattle. It listed upcoming projects to include a 15-kilometer access road, additional solar-powered boreholes, a dam and irrigation system, schools, a healthcare center, security post, pastures and manure production centers, as well as markets. He also disclosed that his ministry was collaborating with the Federal Capital Territory Administration, the Federal Ministries of Water Resources, Power and Health, as well as the Rural Electrification Agency and the Universal Basic Education Commission to deliver services in the reserve. For more details of that story, check the Nation newspaper with the headline Federal Government Begins Relocation of Herders to Kawu Grazing Reserve.
And still taking stories from the Guardian newspaper, where I have OB questions while National Library still needs birthday donations. Now the details. Former Anambra State Governor and Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi has slammed the federal government over its failure to complete the National Library in Abuja. Obi comments came in response to the First Lady Oluremi Tinubu's recent birthday appeal, in which she asked well-wishers to donate funds towards finishing the long-abandoned library instead of sending cakes or newspaper adverts. In her appeal, the First Lady said, "By the grace of God, I will be turning 65 years old on the 21st of September 2025. I have decided to dedicate the day to God for all His blessings in my life and to have a quiet birthday. I wish to appeal to those who would like to send birthday cakes, card, flowers, greetings in the newspaper or gifts. Instead, kindly send funds to designated account for the completion of the National Library. This will be the best birthday present I could receive," while wishing her a happy birthday. Obi, in a tweet on Sunday, said this is struck by an irony of our request, describing it as noble and selfless on the surface, but ultimately an indictment to the nation. Obi also reflected on his time as governor, saying he asked that money meant for adverts be used for education instead, but noted that the state still bore the responsibility of providing those essentials and that such gestures were never meant to replace the government's duty but to complement it. For details, see the Guardian newspaper with the headline Obi questions while National Library still needs birthday donations.
And that brings us to the end of today's edition of In the Papers. We have taken you through major headlines from newspapers within and outside Nigeria. And we also hope this review has kept you informed on key issues shaping conversations today. Do stay tuned for more updates and programs coming your way shortly. On behalf of myself, INIOLUWA ADEKOYA, and my colleague,
Florence IBHAREMAN.
Many thanks to you for joining us. Until next time, have a productive and pleasant day.
The best station in music news.